The year was 2022, and I had entered my third year of coaching for the Executive Leadership Council. I would coach their clients, their Fortune 500 clients, and they would send leaders my way through programs like Decoded, sponsored by Google, others with Capital One. It was a pleasure. But each time I would get on a call, a Zoom with the Executive Leadership Council, they'd have their coaches and they'd also have their facilitators. It's probably the first time I ever laid eyes on or knew anything about Adrion Porter. I would meet Adrian later in the year in October as I traveled to Washington, D.C. to facilitate at the Mid Level Management Symposium. And by facilitate, I mean speak. I spoke to about 250 mid level managers and leaders from across the United States and even some other countries, standing room only on the topic knowing your value. In between those sessions, I got to meet another facilitator. His name, Adrion Porter. I'm very excited to share with you what Adrion does. We are now fellow adjunct faculty for the Executive Leadership Council, and we're working together on SOAR Women's Leadership Academy. He is a Generation X expert. In fact, he knows a bit about all the generations. And as you know, as a student of culture, I focus on the generations as well. A lot about what I do and what Adrian does intersect. So I thought it'd be appropriate for you to meet. Let's get it. Hey, y'all. This is Culture Soup, where tech, culture, and business collide. It's a podcast that spoons up everything hot from social media. I'm your host, L. Michelle Smith, and each episode we bring you some of the most notable and not yet notable thought leaders in tech, business, and culture. Hey, everybody. I am so excited to be back this week with an amazing guest, Adrion Porter. And he and I met through the Executive Leadership Council. We're both facilitators. I've been doing some coaching. Hey, Adrion, what's going on?
What is going on, L. Michelle? I am beyond excited and honored to be joining you on this awesome platform, and we're gonna have some fun. I'm deeply honored and I'm excited.
Yay, I'm excited to have you too.
Yeah.
And there's a little something that, I leaked the news not long ago. It's not a secret anymore, but you're
Yeah.
a part of the faculty of something that I have started, and there's some other faculty members too. It's called the SOAR Women's
Sure.
Leadership Academy.
Yes,
Yay!
yes. Yay. Yes,
Thank you so
yes.
much for
Sure.
being a part of that. And tell everybody what you'll be talking about.
Yes. Well, first, before I even get into what I'll be talking about, again, I must give you your flowers. And firstly, again, I am honored to be part of the faculty of this great movement. Not only I call it a movement, but also a program called SOAR. And what fascinated me and what I was so honored to be a part of because it's addressing women leadership, professional growth, and part of that I will be trying to add. I'll be adding value, I should say, to you
Of course you will.
to the community, part of the faculty. So I'll be talking specifically about people accelerating their growth and getting unstuck who are primarily Gen Xers, people in our generation, people like me who are mid-career, midlife, which is my specialty in my lane, but particularly for women, because as many people may know, especially if you are a woman who's 40 plus and part of the Gen X generation, that not only do you have that great opportunity to be in the middle, but also on top of that, being a woman, there could be some challenges externally, but we're going to help you soar and get unstuck as a fabulous, exceptional woman, part of the SOAR Academy.
Well, you know what? Thank you in advance for being a part of it. And to the listeners out there who are wondering, oh, gee whiz, I probably missed it because the deadline was at the end of February. I realized that there are some companies, some organizations, and some individuals who needed a little bit more time. So the new deadline for applications is the 15th of March. So you have time. Get in there and know that if you're a slacker, you're not going to make it to the E or the C suite. But we want to make sure that you do. So get on board for this program that we're doing. And the other thing that I want to tell you is you can go and find out more about it at lmichellesmith.com/soar. Now it's time to talk some more to Adrian. So, Adrian, you have a consultancy called Mid Career Mastery. Tell me what it's about.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, Mid Career Mastery essentially is where we're trying to build the most powerful personal and professional growth platform for people 40 plus. So, mid career, midlife, in the middle. And in this day and age, which I talk about a lot, we're redefining what does it mean to be mid career? What do I mean by that? And so, used to be the average professional career would be 40 years, right? You graduate from college, or if you go into the working world in your early 20s, you typically would retire at age 60 or 65 and get the gold watch. That's no longer the case, especially with the extension of life expectancy. We're living longer, we're working longer. So the average career now is really 60 years or so, or even longer.
Mm-hmm.
So mid career is really anywhere between your 40s and 65. But at the end of the day, for people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and above, mid career, midlife, middle years, and it's a platform to help you accelerate your growth and not only get unstuck, but maximize your impact at work and on the world. And we do that through, I look at 4 quadrants. So number one is content. And so that's the top of the funnel, whether it's newsletters, content, just to get you aware of the value of being mid-career. Then there's curriculum. So whether it's courses or workshops, and then we look at coaching. And then last but not least, probably the most important is community. And so we're in the midst of building out a community for mid-career mastery, MCM. And again, it is the platform and community for people 40 plus to help you maximize your impact on the world and on the workplace in those middle critical years.
I love it. And there's so much cross pollination between what
Yeah,
you're doing and what I'm doing because
yeah,
the women and women leaders and women of color that I coach and I consult with, they tend to be right there in that sweet spot where they
yes,
have 10, 15, 20 years in
right,
business and they're trying to figure out, well, gee whiz, I always aspired to be in the E or C suite, but life got in the way and maybe family, or maybe
right.
even just I forgot how to dream.
That's
And we're
right.
trying to reignite those dreams with these ladies. But before we get too deep into it, Adrian, how about we have a culture soup moment?
Let's do it.
I scour the internet all the time. I'm on the internet engaging with folks, whether it's on LinkedIn or Twitter or, any of the platforms, Instagram. But what I've noticed on Instagram, well, LinkedIn, is that I see a lot of chatter about the other generations. We see everything about, especially Gen Z,
Right,
millennials dominated for eons. And those folks, they're knocking on the door of the C suite if they're not there already. I think people
right,
forget that they are grown with kids and they're in houses, right?
right, right.
But they still kind of talk about millennials with a little bit more disdain. I actually have respect for them
Of
because
course.
there's some things that they did that we can take lessons from as Gen Xers. And
Correct.
there's a reason why they call us the silent generation. Can you talk some more about Gen X?
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, this is a topic, Michelle, that I love discussing because, again, I'm a proud Gen Xer, and I always say, we're the middle, often forgotten but overlooked, but very powerful generation between those brilliant boomers and those magnificent millennials. And you always hear me, I guess, craft that type of narrative because it's not about tearing down other generations, as you alluded to.
Sure.
It's about building up the forgotten generation. So Gen Xers, it's interesting. So we are and I'm a generational nerd. I've been that way. For me, it comes from just my thirst and excitement of knowledge and also being a recovering corporate marketer. I like to tell people I'm used to looking at data and demographics, but generationally, we are the generation with the lowest numbers. So baby boomers
Hmm.
are probably around 77 million in the US based on Pew Research. Millennials are at 80, so they actually surpassed boomers years ago as the largest generation, which is why they get a lot of the press.
Hmm.
Gen Xers, we're sitting at 65 million. We're the smallest generation due to a number of incidents. Number one, we came of age and we were born past the baby boom. It was like the baby bust. And divorce rates were higher in kind of that between the years of 65 and 80. So with birth years, let me just define generations. So Gen Xers based on Pew Research, which I use as a source, where our birth years are anywhere between 1965 through 1980. And based on Pew Research, millennials' birth years are starting born 1981 through 1997 for Gen Z through 2015 or so, 2014. And then we get into Generation Alpha, believe it or not. So they're starting over with the Greek alphabet.
Oh, that's interesting. Because Joni was the very tail end of 2012, Gen Z, and 1 and 2 babies born in 2012 are babies of
Yes.
color. So I can
Yeah.
only imagine what Alpha looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, it's totally different. So with Gen Xers, we're the smaller, but when we came of age, especially during the late 80s and the 90s, we were often called the slackers. We were lower in numbers, and then we have the millennials coming into coming of age. Remember, they came of age in the year 2000s. That's why they called the millennials. They came of age after the advent of social media and during the explosion of social, during the explosion of the internet. So that's why you hear a lot of media. But with Xers, since we're often the comparatively the smaller generation, we don't get a lot of ink. But right now, we are in the prime of our years. We are in our 40s and our 50s and approaching our 60s. We're at the prime earning years. We're in leadership positions or approaching leadership positions in C-suites. We are family individuals. So if we choose to, we're married with kids. We have a lot of working years. So we're very powerful when it comes to what we have to offer. And just kind of a story, how I got into generational theory and my passion. It's funny. And I always say that the dots always connect. The dots always connect. When I work with individuals, when I speak or when I coach and consult, especially when we start talking about being in this middle year, middle season, and primarily Gen Xers are in mid-career, midlife, and we're looking to pivot or transition, but we don't know where we want to go. And we're looking for signs. I always say connect the dots. So in my early 20s, I'm from originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I did a lot of speaking in my church, and I got pushed into it, believe it or not, because I was really shy. But once I started,
Isn't that a black church for you, though? They're going to put
exactly.
you up there to speak.
They're gonna put me up there. I started off funny. I started welcoming the visitors, right? And it was actually my mom. She encouraged me to do that because she knew that I had a passion for kind of being out there. I used to perform Bobby Brown, My Prerogative in my talent show in high school. We're not gonna talk about that, but I killed it,
Wasn't
right?
at church. That wasn't at the church picnic. That was at school. Got you. Just to be clear.
But no, but that wasn't no, it wasn't at church. But some of the churches in Memphis, you probably could have done that too. But anyway, but she knew that I had this in me. But when it came to speaking in front of people, I had to warm into it. But anyway, my first speaking role at church was welcoming the visitors, right? In a black church, you for all the visitors, please stand up
That's what you got to
and
do.
and and we welcome you. But I just didn't do that. So I decided, the creative mind, that I was gonna do an acronym with visitors and get up there and say, hey, this is Adrion, and I'm probably 22 at the time. Visitors, thank you for joining our church, Cumming Street Baptist Missionary Baptist Church. Um, and let's talk about what visitors really mean. You, as a visitor, you may think that you're on the outside, that you're
You
not
made it a
welcome.
keynote?
Oh, I made it a keynote, baby. And I said, visitors is for the victory that you will be receiving once you walk through these doors. The
Ooh,
I is for inclusion. The S is for being in this sanctimonious. And I'm,
hallelujah.
I'm probably mixing up the words because that was like 30 years ago. But I spelled out visitors, and then I remember getting a standing ovation. And then from that, it was on. And after that, I started doing the speaking with themes based on Men's Day, Women's Day. But one particular Sunday, it was Youth and Young Adult Day, and I was 25 at the time. And the theme was about being youth and young adult in this society. It was 1996. And I talked about, and I have still the speech recorded on cassette, and I have it written out, and I went to Kinko's and typed it up. And I mentioned Generation X at 25 years old. And I reference, for all of us who are young adults, they call us Generation X, the X generation, which X means the unknown, right? It's
Yeah.
negative. And we're going through all these things as young adult, and we're not sure what we want to do. And then toward the end of the speech, I talked about the power of being a youth and young adult in our 20s. And I said, it's time to change that negative title of Generation X and unknown to a more positive title, like Generation Exuberant, Generation
Oh.
Exemplify, Generation Extravagant, Generation Extraordinary,
No,
Generation.
wait. I got to stop you because now you're preaching. Now you're preaching.
That's what I did at 25. So at the time, I already knew about Generation X, and here's a plug for Black Enterprise, which I'm a fan of. I remember reading an article by Tariq Muhammad. It was back in 1997, 96 or 97, and it was all about the new. It was talking about from Buppy to BizWiz about Generation X and being in our 20s and 30s. And so I remember that was the first time I probably noticed the term, and I started studying it. And I incorporated the term Generation X in my 20s at church. And so fast forward, remember I talked about connecting the dots.
Sure.
I had a passion as an early 20-year-old to uplift my generation as a young adult, Generation X. Now here I am with a podcast in my 40s, now in my early 50s, but I launched it in my 40s because at the time we were still a generation that was often unknown, but we had different pain points. We're now in mid-career, midlife. We're now leaders of organizations. We're trying to be leaders in organizations. We're leaders in our family. So I launched a podcast called Gen X Amplified. Same message, different theme, but still focused on Gen X. And so that's just kind of the story how I talked about the dots always connect. I never, if you would have told me in 1996 that when I was 25 that I would 30 years later, 20 something years later, launch a podcast speaking to the same audience, I would have probably told you, yeah, right. But here I am. And so
Well,
that's why,
and you know what? Again, I say there's so much similarities between what we do. I
yes,
have a saying in my keynotes and also in my writings where I say they're keys to your future in your past. And it's
yes,
so important to look back at these things because it helps us to get to know ourselves. And you can't bet on yourself if you don't know who you are. So, yes, this is awesome. And the other thing is, I think it's so, well, it's not ironic at all because it's the story of so many exceptional Black leaders, whether you're
right.
women or men, that so much of our leadership lessons came from the Black church.
That is
That's
true.
my next book, actually.
Oh, wow.
Leadership lessons from the church. So I may have to come back to you and get some
Okay.
little color around those stories.
I love it. Yeah, the Black church is filled with great stories. You talk about the power of storytelling, the power of narrative, the power of
Yes.
community. I mean, we talked about all the, like, for example, I talked about earlier the four quadrants of the value that we're provided with mid career mastery: content, curriculum, community, coaching. Think about those four quadrants also in the Black church. You get
Yes.
content, you get your sermons, you get your devotionals, you have your community, obviously your segregation, you have your curriculum, whether it's Bible study, and then obviously, you have your coaching, whether it's from the pastor, whether it's from the youth minister, whether it's from your
Or the
fellow
sisters in the
colleagues.
church, the mothers in the
So
church.
the
Yeah, the
nucleus
elders.
of the church, it is a representation of any organization or community that's trying to add value. And again, the dots always connect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, this is really good. Let's shift a bit
Yes.
and let's talk about what you've been up to lately.
Yes.
You travel a little bit and
Yeah.
you're taking your message beyond. So
Yes.
you just
Yes.
came from North Carolina. What were you doing there?
Yeah, no, it's great. In North Carolina. I was actually in partnership with one of how we met. So I'm also on the adjunct faculty of Executive Leadership Council. So we were speaking to a client of theirs, Barings, and we were talking about obviously this part of accelerating your career as a diverse professional. So I did that. I'm actually before that I was also in DC working with AERP, also with Black Enterprise. So I do a lot. I'm actually heading up this summer, couple to New York, working with Thurgood Marshall College Fund. I'm speaking 2 weeks from now in another location. So what I do is, like you said, it's all about taking your message to the masses and try to do, whether it's in partnership with other organizations, like whether it's ELC or Thurgood Marshall College Fund or AERP, which is a huge partner of mine, to my own with Mid Career Mastery. It's really about amplifying the message, and particularly through Mid Career Mastery and what I do with Gen X Amplified, the podcast, what I do with Fabulous Over 40, which is another platform that I own and created, which is a spotlight series on LinkedIn in the form of a post series where I highlight professionals and leaders who are happening to be maximizing and creating meaningful impact on the world, who happen to be in midlife. And a lot of them are executive professionals, people that you may know or may not know. And I also do that through this Fabulous Over 40 fireside chat series, where I take some of those individuals and we have a dialogue like this. And so everything that I do, whether it's Fabulous Over 40, Mid Career Mastery, Gen X Amplified, my own speaking, and the platform, it's all about amplifying that there's magic in the middle. If you are in mid-career, midlife, it's a way to get unstuck. And I'll just take a step back and talk about the genesis of why I'm so passionate about this. So as a data nerd and as a data geek, and also making sure to understand the why of what I do and how I can create impact. This feeling that a lot of us feel when we're Gen Xers or when we're mid-career, it's natural. The feeling I'm talking about, whether it's the mid-career malaise, a lot of people talk about the midlife crisis, right? That a lot of Gen Xers or people in the middle go through. But I look at it, and maybe not necessarily a crisis at times, but more of this feeling of malaise. It's natural. And for those of you who may not know, there's this phenomenon called the happiness U curve, which I studied, I've researched, and once I discovered it, I became everything that I do is rooted in that. So what that means is that it's been documented through research and data, and it started with labor economists who were studying the correlation between work and life satisfaction and happiness with age. And they noticed that as you age, starting in early adulthood, they did longitudinal studies of this and also focus groups, self reported over 200,000 individuals, that in your early adulthood, your level of self reported happiness at work and life tends to be high. But as you age, it starts to go down a little bit, right? As you get older in your 20s and your 30s. And then it nadirs in its lowest point, guess, in your 40s, right? Self reported happiness and work satisfaction. It's been documented over numerous studies. It started with labor economists. And then a report that just came out through the National Bureau of Economic Research just did another study, a longitudinal study, that showed the level of stress with age, which is the inverse of the curve, also correlated. It forms a U. And so then as you go through your 40s and 50s, your level of happiness tends to be at its lowest point. Why people feel stuck, why they're stressed, why they go through the midlife malaise or crisis. But as you
Well,
get
and they're
older,
aging.
and they're aging, but as you get older, but here's the catch, why it's called the happiness U curve. As you get past your late 50s into your 60s, it goes back up. Your self-reported happiness goes back up into your 70s, and it forms this U shape. And so that's why in your early adulthood you're happiest. In your late adulthood, you tend to be happy. But in the middle, self-reported, there's a slump. And that's why there's this natural feeling of malaise. And we're wired, we're biologically wired. So the common thought and nomenclature is things will get better once you get past this middle. It will get better when you age. But the way I attack it, I look at it, let's not wait till we age and get into our late 60s and 70s. How do we transform this malaise into mastery? How do we master these middle years? How do we make the most of being in the middle where we're feeling stressed and stuck to becoming unstressed and unstuck? And that's how everything that I do is rooted into flattening that happiness U curve to making it more of magic in the middle, and we master those years. And so I do that with the platforms and everything that I do to really amplify the power of being in your middle years.
Excellent. Awesome. Awesome. So, I work with leaders primarily. I work with
Yes.
organizations too, but typically working with them to work with the leaders. Kind of
Right.
like Nike. I'm here for the
Right.
athlete. So, my question for you is, seeing that I have primarily women and women of color who are in the middle of the leadership pipeline, some of them are spewing out mostly because they've either been pushed out, they've left on their own because they
Right.
were unhappy,
Right.
or they're going to start businesses,
Right.
unprecedented. They're doing this, and Black women are leading the way in all of this. And a lot of what I do is to help these women figure out how to stay in corporate America. And what I uncover is many of them had some aspiration at some point in their life to go higher in the food chain in corporate America.
Right.
What insights can you give this particular leader on how to recapture that verve and even the dream that they may have had to
Mm.
climb higher?
It's a great question. So what I would do is I start, and this is actually a great lob, an assist, because what we're trying to do and what you're definitely have been doing with whether it's store or everything that you're doing in your message and what I'm trying to do maps so well. So if you're in that middle in leadership and you're trying to get back that feeling, but you're in this moment where you're feeling stuck, I use kind of a three pillar approach. And this is actually a framework that I've created, and that's pretty much my signature framework and message. It's called the Malaise to Mastery Map, and it's a three-pillar, simple but actionable model to get unstuck, particularly in those middle years, but it can be used in any age. And I look at three pillars. Number one, the three pillars are mindset. Second is meaning, and last is milestones. And I'll unpack that, especially for you as a Black woman professional. Because remember, if you are a Black woman, African person of color, and you're in that middle, you're dealing with not only all the isms, right? Whether it's sometimes racism, you're dealing with sexism, you're dealing with ageism, and I call it the triple threat isms, right? And so with that, you have a lot. So your you may be a different, maybe a low uppercase you compared to a lot of times these data points are underreported when it comes to people of color. So let's unpack these three pillars, and it's called the Malaise to Mastery Map. It's three actionable pillars how to get unstuck in those middle years. So first is mindset. That's all about reframing your mindset. What does it mean to be in this period? Why are you stuck? What is the shift that you're trying to make? Have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. If let's call her the avatar, let's call her Jennifer, right? She's 45, she's married, she's two kids, she's a Gen Xer, Jennifer the Gen Xer, which is the name of my avatar, right, by the way.
That's
She's
great.
black. She's black. Jennifer is stuck. She's stressed. She's like mid management, but she's on that approach of accelerating, but she's stressed out, right? She's in her 40s. She's at the bottom of that U. She's thinking it's either too late for me to excel. I'm too old. It's too late. There's so many other things. So let's start with mindset. That's all about reframing, reimagining. What does it mean to be Jennifer 45 in this world of work? So have a growth mindset. Number one, understand that it's not too late to thrive. This is the you have the power of your community in these middle years. Have a growth mindset. Read Carol Dweck's book Mindset, which I always reference. Have a growth mindset. And so understand, what does it mean to be in this middle? Okay, reinforce that this is normal. What you're feeling is normal. Second is meaning. That's all about discovering your meaning, your purpose, your why, right? What are your values? What is your purpose as a 45-year-old African American woman at this season in your life? Your why and your purpose may look solely different than it was in your 20s. Okay, at this season, what is it that you want to achieve? What is the meaning behind where you are right now? And then define your purpose statement. Look at what's driving, what's giving you motivation, and what do you want to achieve? Really look at what is a meaningful path and career for you at this season. So identify the role, the job, whatever the case may be. That's professionally, personally. What is a meaningful personal life? Identify that, write it down, and attack it. First, reframe your mindset. Now look at your meaning. Now let's look at milestones, the third pillar. Once you define that, let's set some milestones, because often what happens is that when you're in this middle, you're absent of milestones. We have plenty of external milestones when we're younger, right? We turn 18, we graduate from college if we choose to. We get our first job. We get our first assignment. Fast forward later years, milestones. You retire, you have grandkids, you're doing this. But in that middle, when it's the busiest, you're absent of those intentional milestones. That's why that is the third pillar. Be intentional with establishing, what are my milestones? What are my goals right now? So you as Jennifer, okay, I want to make a VP of this organization, or I want to become C-suite, or I want to create a huge project that's going to give me impact in a year. Personally, I want to, whether it's be healthier, unhappy marriage, get divorced, I don't know, whatever the case may be, but any personal miles, learn piano, personal, professional. And so once you do that, you get from this point and this feeling of being stuck and stressed because everything wasn't intentional, is that you reframe your mind, you discover your meaning, and you've established those milestones. And that's called the Malaise to Mastery Map. And I would encourage Jennifer or anyone who's in this target group to think about those three pillars of getting unstuck and become intentional, and reframe your mindset, discover your meaning, and establish those milestones.
Awesome. So for anybody wondering what his session's going to be like with SOAR Women's Leadership Academy, you just got a preview. That's awesome. That is so awesome. So awesome.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
tell me, we also have this in common. Former marketers, as in strategic comms.
That's right.
More than 25 years.
Yes, yes,
And you
yes,
did it
yes.
too. And we made our transition. I made it a
Yeah.
couple times, but we made our transition from
Yes.
entrepreneurship to business owners.
Yes.
How's that been for you? And what was the impetus for you doing that?
Impetus for me was, it wasn't by choice. I actually got pushed into it. I got laid off. So
It happened to me too. I was surplus.
yeah, and so it's interesting. That is the true impetus, but I would say I've always had desires to create my own path. I actually have it written down in my high school senior memory book or yearbook, and also in a book well, I'm a huge fan of Les Brown. The book that my mother bought for me, Live Your Dreams, one of his first book. I received it in 1993, and in the back of most books, you have these exercises. I'm sure you know as an author, but it talked about your goals. And I wrote back in 1993. This is before I really got into the professional world. My goal to be an entrepreneur of my own organization, to help others. So I knew I've always wanted to do that. However, my path with going through school, going to business school at Vanderbilt, working at Citigroup in New York, working at HBO, working as a marketing director, working at Cartoon Network, that was my path because I used the skills that I attained through school, through professional. But I've always wanted to do my own thing. So when I got laid off from Turner back in 2011, the year that I turned 40, by the way, so I'm approaching that bottom of the U, and then really it happened. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And through the encouragement of a friend of mine who encouraged me, Adrian, you have all of these skills and experiences. Why don't you try consulting? And so that's what I did. And once I started doing that, I just got hooked. I went back for a couple of years as a CMO of a startup here in Atlanta. But for the most part, since that moment, I've been on this path of creating impact and value based on my own thoughts and ideas and thought leadership. And so it's initially, again, the impetus was like I pushed into the waters, but once I got in the waters, I just kept swimming. And what's helped me along the way is just the power of community, the
Yeah.
encouragement, talking to other and working with other entrepreneurs like yourself, because people, you have to understand this. It's great if you feel the thirst to create something from nothing, to solve a problem with a solution that you have, which is the true meaning of entrepreneurship. You're solving a problem. If you feel compelled to do that, that's great. Just know that it is a lonely road.
Oh yeah.
And especially coming from corporate, where you have the comfort of colleagues and budgets and
Infrastructure.
infrastructure and every 2 weeks and so payment. And so, but the thrill that I get from adding value with something that I create is very powerful. So again, the power of community, me also going through the Malaise to Mastery map myself, especially being someone who's in middle years doing this, to also constantly go through and realize those three pillars. I need to constantly reframe my mindset that, that I have something of value, that I can continue to grow, constantly redefine and rediscover my meaning, and then constantly establish those milestones. Because once I continue to do that, it helps me get through this period, especially when you are an entrepreneur and just doing it and out here on your own, and you're focused on, you really have to eat what you kill. And it's very
Yes.
different from being in corporate.
Absolutely. Adrian, it has been so awesome chatting with you. Where can everyone find you online?
Great. Well, first, before I say that, I must say again, it's been an honor and awesome chatting with you, El Michelle. I really been watching you. I've been enjoying what you're doing. I've been inspired. I'm always, when you're in this world, you're focused, you
Yeah.
have tunnel vision. You're just trying to add value to others. But every now and then you get a chance to come up and observe what other great people are doing. And I must say that
Aw.
I've been observing what you've been doing and the value that you've been adding. And I just want to continue to encourage you to keep fighting the good fight and never stop. But with that, for me, I'm easy peasy. I'm at adrionporter.com, first, last name. I'm on all the social handles, Adrion Porter. My primary platform is LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time, but I'm also on IG at Adrion Porter, Facebook page, Adrion Porter, Adrion Porter on like Donkey Kong, Adrion Porter. That's a Gen X reference, by the way. but adrionporter.com, you can find me, and also midcareermastery.com, you can find the platform.
Awesome. Adrian, it's a pleasure. And you guys, if you want to meet him, go ahead and apply for SOAR Women's Leadership Academy. I'm excited. Thank you so much, Adrian. And I'll talk to you a little later, okay?
Same here. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
What an awesome conversation with my friend and colleague, Adrion Porter. Of course, he is a Generation X expert and the founder of Mid Career Mastery. And he's also on the faculty of SOAR Women's Leadership Academy. And I'm excited because he's going to bring all that knowledge to the cohort, which, by the way, did you apply? The deadline has been extended to March 15th. We get started this month, so you need to hurry. Go to lmichellesmith.com/soar to submit your application. Look, if you are already a part of my coaching community, and I know you're guaranteed admission. That means even if you're at an organization I've worked with before, sending leaders, or maybe you're a client or a past client or someone who's read a book and been a part of my book clubs, you are guaranteed admission. So listen, apply, and we'll get you enrolled right away. We're going to kick off March 30th. All right, look. The other thing about Adrion is that our conversation continued, and he has the distinction of being the premiere episode of TCSP After the Show and Duets. What is that? It's subscription-based bonus content. There's a monthly fee, about $3.99, depending on where you are in the world, a month, to get access to this gated content. This content is completely off topic, or sometimes we continue to talk. It just depends. In our situation, Adrion and I are both music fanatics. Me, myself, a professional singer, and he even has some roots, uncles who have written for some famous people. In fact, we name drop a few famous people in After the Show. So you want to hear about this. And we're focused on primarily hip hop. I'll give you that hint. So sign up today. It is available for Apple subscriptions. And you can do that. And you're also going to get a segment called Duets. I've had this in the lab for a while. And I found that so many of my guests on the show are musically inclined, or they're music fanatics. Many of them are singers too. In duets, we're just going to randomly pick a song that we both know and sing a few bars. It's just for fun. And then also, archived episodes will be available in the subscription model. So membership will have its privileges. We'll do some special offers and some giveaways. I'll hope you sign up for TCSP After the Show and Duets. That's our subscription content. Listen, I have a few speaking opportunities coming up. Go to my website to find out where I'll be next. I know in April, I'll be doing the Executive Leadership Council's Power of Women at Work. It's in April, it's virtual, and you can all join in from wherever you are. You'll have to go to the ELC website to register. Find us online at theculturesoup.com, on Instagram and Twitter at The Culture Soup, and on Facebook at The Culture Soup Podcast. Until next time.
The Culture Soup Podcast is a production of No Size Communication, LLC.
The Culture Soup Podcast is a registered trademark of No Silos Communications, LLC.